Bullies humiliated the new teacher, not knowing he was an elite assassin. Undercover Marcus Kane had learned to be resourceful during his years in Black Ops missions across Eastern Europe. He didn't tolerate chaos in his personal space. Everything had to be precise and organized. Order was survival. The story begins with Marcus Kane, a highly skilled operative and former Special Forces commander, completing what would be his final authorized mission alongside his elite tactical team. They had successfully infiltrated and neutralized a terrorist cell in Prague, but upon their return, disturbing news awaited them. The operation they had just completed was discovered to be completely unauthorized by their superiors. This revelation sent shockwaves through the team, and as a direct consequence, they were all immediately discharged from active duty. With no mission parameters to follow and no chain of command to report to, the team members dispersed to their respective civilian lives. Marcus, now unemployed and without purpose, decided to return to his hometown of Phoenix to rest and contemplate his uncertain future. The transition from elite operative to civilian was jarring, leaving him feeling displaced and restless. The narrative shifts to the bustling metropolitan area of Phoenix, where the camera focuses on Sarah Martinez, a dedicated and passionate high school teacher at Lincoln High School. Sarah was in the middle of conducting an engaging literature class, completely absorbed in helping her students understand complex themes in classic novels. Her classroom was typically a haven of learning and intellectual growth. However, this peaceful academic environment was violently disrupted when pandemonium erupted throughout the school campus. A vicious and coordinated attack broke out among several students, and it quickly became apparent that this wasn't merely a spontaneous altercation. The entire incident appeared to be meticulously planned and orchestrated to target one specific vulnerable student. Sarah and her colleague, Mr. Thompson, courageously rushed into the melee to intervene in the brutal assault. Despite facing significant personal danger, they managed to separate the combatants and shield the victimized student from further harm. Surprisingly, the student they had rescued insisted that he hadn't required their assistance, obviously attempting to preserve his reputation and avoid being perceived as weak or defenseless. Following the violent incident, Sarah attempted to engage with the primary instigator of the attack, a menacing teenager named Diego Vargas. Diego was far from an ordinary troublemaker. He was the feared and ruthless leader of a criminal organization known as the Crimson Serpents. With a maternal but firm approach, Sarah tried to reach out to him, speaking with genuine concern about his future prospects and encouraging him to reconsider his destructive path. Diego regarded her with cold, calculating eyes, openly mocking her attempts at intervention and delivering a chilling warning for her to mind her own business. He then walked away with deliberate arrogance, making it crystal clear that he had absolutely no intention of heeding her advice or changing his behavior. Still shaken, but determined to take action, Sarah and Mr. Thompson immediately went to Principal Robert Hartwell to report the incident and Diego's direct threat. They urgently pressed the principal to take decisive disciplinary action against Diego and his criminal associates, especially after Sarah revealed that she had been personally threatened with violence. However, Principal Hartwell dismissed their legitimate concerns, claiming there was insufficient concrete evidence to justify expelling Diego from the school. Sarah became visibly frustrated and stormed out of the administrative office, declaring that she would gather the proof necessary to force action. When Sarah reached her vehicle in the school parking lot after classes ended, she discovered herself completely surrounded by members of the Crimson Serpents gang. Her car's door locks had been deliberately sabotaged with hardened gum, making it extremely difficult for her to gain entry. The gang members taunted and harassed her relentlessly, laughing maliciously and hurling crude insults as she struggled desperately with her keys. Diego made an obscene gesture toward her, but Sarah refused to be intimidated or cowed by their tactics. She boldly returned the same gesture, but inverted it as a defiant act of resistance. Finally managing to unlock her car door, she drove away while the gang continued shouting offensive and threatening comments behind her. Upon arriving home, Sarah was relieved and comforted to find Marcus waiting for her. She ran into his strong arms, feeling both happiness and relief at seeing him after their long separation. Marcus explained that he had been honorably discharged from his military service, and they spent the evening discussing their future together, wondering what career path he might pursue now that his military days were behind him. Shortly afterward, Marcus received an intriguing voicemail from one of his former teammates, Tommy Chen. There was a potentially lucrative job opportunity that could provide substantial financial compensation for his specialized skills. They arranged to meet at an upscale nightclub to discuss the details of this mysterious proposition. Tommy, one of Marcus's most trusted former teammates, urged him to seriously consider this opportunity. They introduced Marcus to the prospective client and to a competitor named Viktor Petrov. Petrov would later prove to be an extremely dangerous individual who would attempt to eliminate Marcus when their paths crossed again. Marcus quickly discovered that the proposed job involved providing armed security for illegal drug shipments and protecting them from rival criminal organizations and federal law enforcement interference. This type of criminal work fundamentally conflicted with Marcus's moral principles and professional ethics. He was a man of unwavering integrity who refused to participate in any illegal activities, regardless of the financial incentives offered. Marcus declined the criminal job offer, explaining that there was a fundamental difference between a professional soldier and a mercenary killer. The distinction lay in their moral compass and willingness to cross ethical boundaries. Consequently, Petrov accepted the position instead, beginning his descent into the criminal underworld. The following morning, Sarah decided to go for her regular jog along the scenic beachfront near their home. She was completely unaware that a member of the Crimson Serpents gang was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. As she ran past his concealed position, he suddenly emerged and launched a vicious assault, striking her knee with a metal pipe and continuing his brutal attack. Fortunately, Marcus was exercising nearby and heard the commotion. He immediately sprinted to her location, arriving just in time to frighten off the attacker before more serious damage could be inflicted. He quickly transported Sarah to the nearest hospital emergency room for immediate medical treatment and evaluation. While recovering from her injuries, Sarah shared her strong suspicions with Marcus. She firmly believed that the attack had been carefully planned and coordinated, likely involving corrupt individuals within the school administration. She pleaded with Marcus to handle her absence from school over the next several days and requested that he make the necessary phone calls to cover her responsibilities. Witnessing how deeply hurt and terrified she was, Marcus made a solemn promise that he would not allow anything further to happen to her. He vowed that whoever was responsible for this cowardly attack would face severe consequences for their actions. After ensuring she was comfortable and safe, he left her to rest and began developing a plan to go undercover as a substitute teacher in her place. Marcus was determined to identify those responsible for the attack and bring them to justice through whatever means necessary. He and his former tactical team devised an elaborate plan to infiltrate the school system. To conceal his true identity and his personal connection to Sarah, he adopted the alias of David Wilson. Using this false identity, he submitted a job application to the school district and was promptly invited for an interview. During the interview process, Principal Hartwell appeared friendly and welcoming on the surface. He informed Mr. Wilson that he would be placed on a probationary period for evaluation purposes. Wilson assured the principal that he would perform his duties to the best of his abilities as Sarah's temporary replacement. Although he maintained a calm and professional demeanor throughout the interview, Wilson was focused entirely on his hidden mission: to identify and expose the individuals responsible for Sarah's attack and uncover any corruption within the school's administration. On his first day of teaching, Wilson entered a classroom filled with disrespectful and completely chaotic students. The room was noisy and utterly disorganized, but Wilson didn't allow the disorder to rattle his composure. He calmly walked to the front of the classroom and began taking attendance, carefully observing each student's behavior and attitude. As he studied the students' interactions, he began to comprehend the severity of the problems plaguing the school. Many students showed complete disregard for education, and disciplinary measures were practically non-existent throughout the institution. Later, in the faculty break room, Wilson reconnected with Mr. Thompson and was introduced to the school librarian, Emma Collins. During their conversation, Thompson explained how dangerous and influential the Crimson Serpents gang had become within the school environment. The gang had established control through intimidation, fear, and violence. Emma added her suspicion that the gang might be directly responsible for Sarah's attack. She even hinted that Principal Hartwell might be collaborating with the criminal organization, though Thompson defended Hartwell's reputation, mentioning that he was a former police officer who wouldn't engage in such corrupt activities. Despite Thompson's defense of the principal, Wilson became increasingly suspicious of Hartwell's true motivations and loyalties. During a private meeting with the principal, Wilson noticed several unusual details that didn't align with a typical educator's lifestyle. Most notably, Hartwell was wearing an expensive gold watch that seemed far beyond the financial reach of a public school administrator's salary. Their conversation became a subtle psychological battle, with each man carefully testing the other's knowledge and intentions. They exchanged calculated comments designed to gauge reactions and reveal hidden information. Wilson commented on Hartwell's apparent confidence in wearing such valuable jewelry in a supposedly dangerous school environment. Hartwell responded by demonstrating his method of maintaining control over the student population, suggesting that power and intimidation were more effective tools than justice and fairness. This philosophy only deepened Wilson's suspicions about the principal's true character and possible criminal connections. That evening, Wilson reconnected with his former military team and outlined a comprehensive surveillance plan. They would secretly install hidden cameras throughout the school to monitor the movements and activities of Crimson Serpents members, gathering concrete evidence of their criminal operations. Some team members initially expressed reservations about the plan, but eventually most agreed to participate in the covert operation. The following day in class, Wilson began a lesson about military strategy and tactics. As he turned his back to write on the blackboard, a student named Kyle threw a crushed aluminum can at his head. With lightning-fast reflexes developed through years of combat training, Wilson caught the projectile in mid-air and immediately threw it back, striking Kyle directly in the forehead. The students were shocked and stunned by this display of speed and precision. Kyle stood up, ready to fight with his classmates, cheering him on aggressively. However, Wilson easily defended himself using non-lethal restraint techniques. He twisted Kyle's arm and pinned him to the floor without using excessive force or causing serious injury. Wilson then approached another student named Miguel, whom he had observed carrying a sharpened metal implement. He calmly requested that Miguel surrender the weapon. When Miguel refused to comply, Wilson grabbed his wrist and applied precise pressure to a nerve point, causing him to immediately drop the dangerous object. This decisive action sent a clear message to the entire class that Wilson was not a typical substitute teacher who could be easily intimidated or manipulated. From that moment forward, the classroom became completely silent and respectful. Wilson took complete control of the learning environment and began delivering an engaging lesson, gradually earning the students' respect through his combination of strength and knowledge. Kyle and Miguel later visited the school nurse and reported the incident to Principal Hartwell. Hartwell quickly dispatched the school security guard, Frank, to Wilson's classroom to investigate the situation. However, when Frank arrived, he discovered something completely unexpected. The classroom was peaceful and orderly, with students sitting attentively and actively participating in the lesson. Frank was confused by this stark contrast to the reported chaos and returned to Hartwell with his surprising observations. Surprised by this positive development, Hartwell decided to postpone any disciplinary action and wait to see how the situation would develop. As the class session continued, Diego Vargas, the leader of the Crimson Serpents, attempted to intimidate Wilson by asking if he had ever been shot in combat. The question was designed to unnerve him, but Wilson remained completely calm and unaffected by the psychological pressure. Later that day, Wilson monitored the school through the hidden surveillance cameras that had been installed by his teammate Jackson. While watching the monitors carefully, he observed Principal Hartwell walking purposefully toward his classroom with obvious hostile intentions. Reacting quickly, Wilson arranged everything to appear completely normal and professional. When Hartwell entered the classroom, he immediately raised a serious concern about potential lawsuits being filed by students' parents. Hartwell demanded that Wilson issue public apologies to avoid termination. However, Wilson was well-versed in employment law and legal procedures. He pointed out that he couldn't be fired without following proper termination protocols, including a mandatory 2-week notice period. His firm legal stance unsettled Hartwell, who hadn't expected such knowledgeable resistance from a substitute teacher. Growing increasingly suspicious of Wilson's confidence and legal knowledge, Hartwell ordered a comprehensive background investigation into his credentials and employment history. However, the investigation only revealed the carefully crafted false documents and fabricated records that Wilson and his team had strategically planted as part of their deep cover operation. Later that evening, Wilson drove Sarah home from her medical appointments. As she entered their house, she discovered a heartfelt letter from several of her students expressing their gratitude for her dedication and concern for their well-being. Touched by this unexpected gesture of appreciation, Sarah began to cry emotionally. Wilson attempted to comfort her, but their heightened emotions led to a minor argument about the risks he was taking. Despite their temporary disagreement, both clearly cared deeply about each other and remained committed to their shared mission of protecting the students. The next morning, Wilson returned to the classroom prepared to continue teaching. Diego Vargas and his group of criminal associates swaggered into the room significantly late, obviously attempting to provoke a confrontation. Wilson addressed Diego's tardiness, assigning him additional academic work as a consequence. Diego sarcastically asked if he should write an apology on the blackboard 10 times. Wilson escalated the punishment, demanding that he write it 100 times instead. Realizing he couldn't openly defy the teacher without facing more severe consequences, Diego agreed, but not before issuing a veiled threat. Refusing to be intimidated, Wilson shifted the classroom dynamic by initiating a deep and meaningful discussion about the students' futures, goals, and the long-term consequences of their current life choices. Slowly, the students began to engage genuinely, their defensive attitudes gradually fading as they realized Wilson was genuinely trying to help them envision possibilities beyond their current circumstances. The discussion became emotionally powerful and enlightening, forcing the students to confront harsh realities about their situations. After the lesson concluded, Hartwell unexpectedly appeared again, this time complimenting Wilson on his effective handling of Diego's disruptive behavior. Hartwell appeared genuinely impressed that Wilson had maintained classroom control without resorting to violence or excessive disciplinary measures. He invited Wilson to meet with him privately later that day to discuss his teaching methods and philosophy. Unknown to Wilson, however, Hartwell had entirely different plans. That same day, he secretly arranged a meeting with Diego Vargas to organize a violent assault on Wilson. They believed it was time to eliminate him permanently before he could uncover more of their criminal operations. Fortunately, Wilson was already anticipating such a move. He had been monitoring their secret meeting through the surveillance cameras and began preparing accordingly. As darkness fell, Wilson equipped himself with protective gear, including a bulletproof vest, and chose a strategic defensive position in the school library. Diego and a group of armed criminals hired by Hartwell burst into the library, initiating a violent confrontation. Wilson fought back with deadly efficiency, utilizing his advanced military combat training. One by one, he systematically defeated the attackers, overpowering them and throwing their unconscious bodies through the library windows. Just as Wilson was about to deal with Diego, one of the gang members recovered his weapon and fired directly at Wilson. Fortunately, his bulletproof vest absorbed the impact. Diego ordered the shooter to kill the librarian Emma Collins to eliminate potential witnesses. However, when the attackers thought they had successfully killed Wilson and moved toward Emma, Wilson revealed that he was very much alive and functional. He threw the gunman through the window onto his accomplices below, leaving Diego shocked and bewildered by Wilson's apparent invincibility. Later, Hartwell was leaving the building when he encountered Wilson, who appeared calm and completely unruffled by the recent violence. Surprised and confused by Wilson's survival, Hartwell attempted to cover his shock and maintain his innocent facade. Wilson played along with the deception, pretending nothing unusual had occurred and casually asking Hartwell about their scheduled meeting. Caught completely off guard, Hartwell mumbled that it was too late for their discussion, and the two parted ways without revealing the truth about the attempted assassination. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson visited Sarah at home to provide comfort and emotional support during her recovery. During their lengthy conversation, Thompson began connecting various pieces of information he had observed. Based on his knowledge of the situation and Wilson's unusual behavior, he started to suspect that Wilson might actually be Marcus Kane, Sarah's husband and former Special Forces operative. Elsewhere, Marcus's teammate Tommy continued monitoring the gang's activities and movements. He followed Diego Vargas through the city and eventually contacted Marcus with detailed information about the gang's current location and planned activities. That evening, Marcus returned home to find Sarah emotionally distraught and confrontational. She had discovered his true identity and understood his real purpose at the school. She revealed that she had learned everything from Thompson's careful observations and deductions. Marcus didn't attempt to deny the truth. Instead, he opened up completely about his suspicions regarding Hartwell's collaboration with the Crimson Serpents and his determination to dismantle their criminal network to protect innocent students and restore safety to the school environment. The surveillance team continued monitoring the gang's operations intensively. One day, Tommy contacted Marcus with urgent information about a major drug transaction scheduled to occur near the Industrial Port District. Marcus arrived at the location, and together they observed the Crimson Serpents negotiating with international drug buyers. Once they confirmed the illegal transaction was proceeding, Marcus and Tommy launched a coordinated surprise attack on both groups. Marcus focused his assault on the gang members, while Tommy handled the buyers attempting to escape by boat. During the chaotic battle, one of Marcus's former teammates, Ryan Holland, who had previously disagreed with their vigilante mission, ordered another team member named Bruce to eliminate Marcus. A brutal hand-to-hand fight erupted between Bruce and Marcus, with both men exchanging devastating blows. Eventually, Marcus managed to knock Bruce unconscious through superior training and determination. Witnessing Marcus's unwavering commitment to justice, the opposing teammate reconsidered his position and decided to support the mission. Together, they defeated Bruce, seized the substantial drug money, and disposed of the illegal narcotics by dumping them into the ocean. The next morning, Hartwell watched a news report about the drug bust with growing anxiety. While processing the implications of this development, he received a threatening phone call from the international drug lord, who was furious about the significant financial losses. The drug lord demanded immediate repayment for the seized money and destroyed product. In a state of panic, Hartwell rushed to the school and confronted Diego about the failed operation. During their heated conversation, he realized that Wilson was responsible for orchestrating the entire operation. Wilson didn't attempt to hide his involvement. He confidently announced that the money recovered from the drug bust had been used to purchase improved educational facilities and provide free meals for deserving students. While he was making this positive announcement, Hartwell rushed toward him and immediately terminated his employment. However, Wilson's heroic actions had earned him widespread admiration and support from other faculty members, students, and Mr. Thompson, who now fully endorsed Wilson's mission to clean up the school. Thompson offered to provide more direct assistance, but Wilson warned him to exercise extreme caution, especially since Hartwell might be working directly with criminal elements. Thompson wanted to maintain faith in Hartwell's innocence, but his judgment was compromised by personal loyalty and misplaced trust. Later that night, Marcus once again became the target of a violent assassination attempt. The gang members connected to the Crimson Serpents, along with their corrupt administrative allies, were growing increasingly desperate to eliminate him because his undercover investigation was systematically exposing their extensive criminal operations. In the darkness, Marcus narrowly escaped a carefully planned ambush. Gunshots rang out through the night, and Marcus's vehicle was riddled with bullets and crashed into a nearby building. However, his advanced military training and lightning-fast reflexes enabled him to avoid serious injury or death. Simultaneously, Mr. Thompson, who had been supporting Wilson's mission and working against the gang's influence, became entangled in dangerous criminal activities. In the school's basement, Thompson attempted to gather concrete evidence of the gang's illegal drug operations and their corrupting influence over the educational institution. Unfortunately, he was discovered and ambushed by Diego and Carlos, key criminals deeply involved in the drug trafficking network. Tragically, Thompson was brutally murdered during this confrontation, and Principal Hartwell was the one who personally carried out the execution. Thompson's death was sudden and shocking, devastating everyone who knew and respected him. Fortunately, a student witnessed the killing and later provided crucial testimony to Marcus and law enforcement authorities about what they had observed. The next morning, news of Thompson's death spread rapidly throughout the school and surrounding community. Hartwell, continuing his role as the corrupt principal secretly collaborating with the Crimson Serpents, had already begun spreading false rumors that Marcus had also been killed during the previous night's attack. Many teachers and students mourned his supposed death, fearing that the school's future was now hopeless without his protection and advocacy. However, to everyone's complete shock and amazement, Marcus appeared at the school very much alive and determined to continue his mission. His unexpected survival caused confusion and terror among those involved in the gang's criminal operations. Marcus's continued existence was clear evidence that the corrupt forces would not achieve victory easily or without significant resistance. With tensions reaching their absolute peak, Marcus confronted Mr. Dawson, another faculty member who had been secretly supporting the drug-dealing operations run by the Crimson Serpents. Marcus challenged Dawson about his betrayal and direct involvement with the gang's criminal enterprises. The confrontation was intense and revealing, exposing the extensive depth of corruption that had infiltrated the school's administrative leadership. Meanwhile, the Crimson Serpents retaliated by launching a coordinated violent attack on Sarah's home. The gang members broke windows, shouted threatening messages, and attempted to terrorize Sarah into submission. The student who had witnessed Thompson's murder was desperately searching for Marcus to report what they had seen, so they visited his home along with a classmate. However, Diego also tracked them to the house and took them hostage, binding their mouths with tape while waiting for Marcus's arrival. Marcus arrived just in time to attempt a rescue, but the gang members initially didn't realize he was the same person as their teacher, Wilson. They unknowingly allowed him to enter the house, but after his initial attacks, he was temporarily overpowered by superior numbers. Unable to immediately help or escape the dangerous situation, Marcus found himself at a severe disadvantage. Diego made a phone call to his criminal superiors to inform them that Marcus Kane and David Wilson were the same person. Upon receiving this crucial information, the crime boss ordered Diego to eliminate Marcus permanently. This violent retaliation demonstrated how far the criminal organization was willing to go to maintain their control and silence anyone who dared to oppose their illegal operations. Just before Diego was about to execute Marcus, he heard the doorbell ring and ordered Sarah to answer it. It was Sarah's concerned landlady checking on the disturbance. While Sarah convinced her to leave without suspecting anything was wrong, Marcus used this critical distraction to stab one of his captors in the leg with a concealed knife. He managed to neutralize most of the attackers using his superior combat skills, but he was unable to rescue Sarah from Diego's grasp. Chaos erupted throughout the house, and Diego placed his weapon directly against Sarah's head, demanding that Marcus surrender his weapon if he wanted to save her life. With no other viable options, Marcus reluctantly complied with the demand and dropped his weapon. However, at the crucial moment, the student hostage managed to kick Diego's gun away from Sarah's head, disarming him and creating an opportunity for Marcus to regain control of the situation. With the immediate threat neutralized, Marcus shifted his attention to the ultimate source of corruption, Principal Robert Hartwell. The story builds toward an explosive final confrontation back at the school, where Marcus and his remaining allies prepare to face the Crimson Serpents in a desperate last stand to reclaim the educational institution. The battle was intense and chaotic, with classrooms being destroyed, desks overturned, and the once peaceful learning environment transformed into a violent war zone. Several lives were lost or seriously injured during this brutal conflict, highlighting the dangerous consequences of allowing criminal organizations to infiltrate educational institutions. Despite the widespread destruction and carnage, Marcus and his team fought with unwavering determination and professional skill. They worked together systematically to dismantle the gang's stranglehold on the school, eliminating key members and exposing the full extent of their criminal network. Several members of Marcus's team also perished during the final battle. One was shot in the head by enemy fire, and another sacrificed himself by detonating explosives to eliminate a group of heavily armed criminals who had them pinned down in a hopeless situation. The violence continued relentlessly, but at a critical moment, Hartwell emerged from his hiding place and shot Ryan Holland in the back. He and his remaining criminal associates then concealed themselves, waiting for Marcus to appear so they could eliminate him once and for all. Marcus was extremely cautious when he finally entered the area. He turned off all the lights before exposing himself, using darkness as tactical advantage. A fierce hand-to-hand battle erupted between Marcus and Hartwell, with the corrupt principal appearing desperate and increasingly unhinged, while Marcus delivered precise, tactical strikes. One of Hartwell's men managed to shoot Marcus in the shoulder, but the wounded shooter was immediately killed by Holland, who was barely alive and using his last breath to protect his teammate and friend. Now that only the two primary adversaries remained standing, their final confrontation began in earnest. The brutal hand-to-hand combat continued for several minutes, with both men exchanging devastating blows and utilizing every technique in their respective arsenals. After an extended and exhausting struggle, Hartwell managed to retrieve a weapon and pointed it directly at Marcus, demanding to know his true motivation for this crusade. If it wasn't for money, what was driving him to such lengths? Marcus looked him directly in the eyes and replied with conviction, "Some principles cannot be compromised, and some things are worth fighting for regardless of personal cost." He then delivered the final decisive blow that ended Hartwell's life and criminal career permanently. Finally, Marcus emerged from the devastated school building and found Tommy injured but alive in the aftermath of the battle. At the conclusion of this violent chapter, only Marcus and his loyal teammate Tommy remained standing after the fierce confrontation. With the criminal gang finally broken and the corrupt leadership eliminated, the school could begin the long process of recovery and rehabilitation. The students and remaining faculty members would gradually regain control of their educational environment, slowly transforming it back into a place of safety, learning, and hope for the future. The community had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of vigilance against corruption and the courage required to stand up for what is morally right, even when facing overwhelming odds and personal danger.